Welcome to Lyme Time. I'm Allie from the Tick Chicks. We are all more than Lyme disease and chronic illness, and together we stand with you to overcome and rise. I'll bring you closer to the experts in cutting-edge treatments and even a few unexpected ways of healing. I'll ask the questions you want answers to regarding Lyme disease and successful ways of getting you closer to 100%. We are in this together and will not be defined by Lyme. Today, I'm happy to welcome Dr. Bill Rawls. Bill Rawls is an OB/GYN and leading expert in Lyme disease, integrative health, and herbal medicine. In the middle of his successful medical career, Dr. Rawls' life was interrupted by Lyme disease. As he struggled to overcome it, he explored nearly every treatment possible, from conventional medicine to a range of alternative therapies. And in the process, Dr. Rawls discovered a dearth of knowledge about Lyme disease in the medical community and a shocking amount of controversy and confusion around causes, diagnosis, and treatment that's left thousands of patients confused, unsupported, and chronically ill. An avid reader and lifelong student, Dr. Rawls studied all of the research available on Lyme disease and put everything he learned into practice in his own life. Ultimately, it was a combination of diet, lifestyle, and herbal therapy that resulted in his recovery. In the more than 10 years since, Dr. Rawls has helped thousands of patients find their path to healing from Lyme disease and chronic illness. He is the author of best-selling book, Unlocking Lyme, and the medical director of rawlsmd.com and Vital Plan, an online holistic health company and certified B Corporation. Welcome, Dr. Rawls.
Thank you, Allie. It's a pleasure.
It's good to see you again.
Yeah.
It's been a while. I remember that you were one of my very first shall I say, victims on my podcast. And I'd like to think I've got a little better, but I don't know. You be the judge of that later on.
I don't know. They're all fun. I really enjoy the dynamic of a podcast and having an interview with another person. You know, it's just an opportunity to get this information out there. As you related, there's a lot of misinformation and a lot out there about Lyme disease and chronic illness in general. And my journey has helped me reach some conclusions that I think are very sound. So if I get an opportunity to share that, I take it. Yeah.
Well, I am always like a sponge whenever you speak, because you've been there, you've walked in all of our shoes, you have medical background, and you have this fabulous book that I keep handy, and I really refer to it a lot. And I refer a lot of people that have questions for me on my own platform, this book as a constant resource. You can flip through it at any time during your health journey, and I feel like it's a wealth of information. I want to also say happy holidays to you, and that's kind of where we're coming from today. We want to talk to our followers out there about the holidays and how that can bring on a new subset of symptoms and issues that perhaps we haven't dealt with in a long time, and we're feeling them again. And so I just want to jump right into some topics here, and hope that everybody can put these to good use so that we all have a safe and healthy holiday season. But first and foremost, let's talk about sleeplessness, because I think that's probably everybody's number one. I want to know why sleeplessness occurs for Lyme disease patients.
Well, you know, to put it short and bluntly, it's hard to sleep when your brain's on fire. You know, and our tissues are inflamed. And what inflammation is just backup of debris and junk in our tissues. So our cells aren't getting healthy, they're inflamed, and nothing is working right. Communications break down. So those normal pathways don't work. And everything is, when your body is congested and inflamed, it activates that fight or flight response. So not only are your tissues inflamed, your brain tissues are inflamed. You've got overactivation of the fight or flight response because your body is basically just in emergency mode all the time. And those things are just terribly disruptive of sleep. That's what got me into trouble in the first place. I was practicing OBGYN, doing call every other and every third night. And so I wasn't sleeping much when I was on call, but lost the ability to sleep when I wasn't on call. And it just got to be this vicious cycle. So yeah, I know all about insomnia, and
Hmm.
I really take care of my sleep.
It's really it's when I was first having symptoms of Lyme disease, I couldn't get over the fact that I was debilitatingly tired, fatigued during the day, could barely walk around. It was awful. It was something that I'd never felt before. It was like walking around in concrete boots. And then I would finally make it all day long and push myself. And then I'd get in bed and I was completely wide awake
Yeah,
almost all night long. And this would happen for days on end.
yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. Yep, it's common.
And also, I think that there's some unrest with not knowing what's going on with your body. And I think it can mentally fatigue you as well.
It does mess with your brain, and you're talking about the holidays, and that adds on a whole new level of stress because we end up eating things we know we shouldn't, and caffeine, and sometimes some alcohol, and all of those things play into the sleeplessness factor too. So it does become an issue for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, and going hand in hand with that, I'd like to also ask you about acute fatigue. And during the holidays, we just push and push, and we're going too hard and too far. And we have so many pressures surrounding expectations of family and entertaining, cooking, meal prep, even just being a parent or being a child, and all the while battling chronic fatigue. And can you explain why that severe fatigue for a chronically ill person is different than just being tired for a regular person, and how to best overcome this symptom?
Sure. Yeah. It's we're fatigued because our cells are suffering, basically. And what this is something that's all this long journey that I've been on. I'm just starting to really put together these pieces, and it all boils down. Health is about health, cellular health. So we have several trillion cells inside of our body, and if we feel well, it's because all of our cells are healthy. For our cells to be healthy, they have to get water, nutrients, oxygen, and and any metabolic waste has to be continually pulled away. So that has to be happening to every single cell in the body. And it requires the efforts of all the cells. You've got to have intestinal cells to extract nutrients, and lung cells to extract oxygen, and heart cells to push it all around in the body. So every cell has to get that flow. So all the communications in the body have to be coordinated so every cell can do its job and help out every other cell. So this is all going on. And if it breaks down, communications break down, and cells are weakened and invaded by microbes inside our body, and all these things are going on, you have the debris that collects from dying cells. So inflammation is about cells dying at a higher rate than they should. We all turn over about 50 to 70 billion cells a day, every single person. But weak cells are invaded by microbes. We all have microbes in their body, and their targets are weak cells. So, and eating bad food and being stressed and all of these things, cells don't get that flow that they need. Cells start dying off faster. When cells die off, then that creates debris, and all the debris blocks the flow, and that weakens cells even further. So you end up in this vicious cycle. On top of that, so you got microbes and debris and garbage and flow inhibited, and then white blood cells called macrophages come in to clean up the mess. They're the garbage collectors of the body, and they use potent acid and free radicals to break it down. So if that's a normal rate, we do okay with that. but you've got this going on in excess. And so you've got the debris and then the acid and free radicals and microbes invading weakened cells. And it's a war zone inside your tissues. How could you not be fatigued with all of this going on? So that's basically what's happening. And, that's happening in our brain. And that causes that fight or flight response that ends up being that vicious cycle that we all struggle with.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's how
almost turned on the entire time, 24/7, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And sleep is when we start clearing out some of that debris, especially out of our brains. And this vicious cycle is preventing the one thing that could really help us the very most. So we struggle. And if you don't get a good night's sleep, you don't clear some of this stuff, you're going to feel fatigued the next day. And it ends up being this thing where you just drag from one day to the next to the next. So breaking the cycle is really important. That's what
Yeah.
this is all about.
I remember early on too, when I had the acute symptoms, one doctor told me, listen, the main thing here is to just not get your days and nights mixed up. If you focus on one thing and one thing only initially, because it kept perpetuating all the symptoms and all the issues. And that was really good advice for me. And however I needed to do that, just to not get my days and nights mixed up, I really listened to that piece of advice. I wanted to ask you, because I think you have a unique position. You're in a unique position to answer a question that I had come up yesterday. I was just on Instagram and I was taking questions and answers. And obviously I'm not a doctor. But so I came across this question that said, people are frightened now about having Lyme and carrying Lyme and potentially passing that along to their child during childbirth. And so we
Yeah.
had some questions that came up regarding, first of all, is it safe? Is the birthing process itself the same as it would be as if you did not have Lyme disease? And also during pregnancy, how does that look? And then, of course, the third question would be, what is your opinion on Lyme disease being passed along to the fetus?
Yeah, I think this is a big concern, and I'll start off by saying that there's certainly cases where Lyme disease has been transferred from a mother in utero to a newborn, but fortunately, it's not as common as you might suspect or be worried about, and it really has to do with preferences of the microbe. So we have a lot of microbes out there and they're trying to get in our body from every direction, but different microbes specialize in different pathways. The coronavirus is being spread by air droplets and goes in through the lungs. So they're all looking for an entry point of how to get into the body. When you look at Borrelia and the other tick-borne microbes, they're specializing in a tick-borne pathway. So that's a really convenient pathway for them to move from one host to another host. But have that being said, all microbes are opportunists. They're going to look for every opportunity to spread from one host to another that they can. But you don't typically see it as much with Lyme disease. And when you look at the scientific literature to see what's out there, there are documented cases of people passing it during the pregnancy. But fortunately, those are pretty uncommon. There haven't been very many cases documented in the scientific literature. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen more commonly than shows up. But they also looked at things like sexual transmission, and they found that people with acute Lyme disease that had pretty high levels of microbes had very low concentrations of the microbes in vaginal fluid or in seminal fluid, which suggests that that microbe isn't choosing a sexual route. And in that, it's probably not going to take a preference for an in utero route either. So that's a little bit reassuring. But again, it can happen. Uh, the thing is, if you can work around it, so eradicating these microbes is really difficult. But if you can be at a high level of wellness when you get pregnant, the chances of transferring it are pretty darn small. There's always the question about whether to do antibiotics, and that can be really disruptive during the pregnancy or during during that immediate postpartum period with a newborn, because that's all of our microbes come from our mother and the surrounding environment immediately when we're born. So most of those are external, not through the uterus, but through touch of skin and breast and just the environment at large. That's where we pull in and create our microbiome from. And there's about a 20 to 40-day period that is it's kind of a sorting out period that the newborn's immune system is figuring out what stays and what goes. So it's pretty good at doing that. And you get the mother's immunity from breast milk. So all of those things are really important. And so antibiotics and those kinds of things can be disruptive. Herbal therapy, there are a lot of herbs that someone could use during pregnancy. So I think there are some herbal options out there. Some you have to be more careful of. And we know about those things of how they were used historically. I don't have any right off the top of my head, except possibly cat's claw would be a good one, but there are some others too that you could use during pregnancy that might give you just a little bit of a safety factor, especially if you were still symptomatic when you got pregnant.
Got it. Got it. And so if somebody was your patient, you would say as a general rule, then what I'm hearing you say is that during pregnancy, if you're not in an acute state, to just kind of lay off everything and just have, go about your normal everyday business and supplement your immune system with healthy, dense foods and vitamin rich foods and go about it as though it would be just any other typical pregnancy.
Right. If you've got a healthy immune system, then these things are going to be suppressed or controlled inside the cells of your body and in pretty low concentrations. So there's much less chance that they're going to be passed along.
That's great. That's good to know. I think if I were pregnant right now and had major concerns, and if I was going through an acute state and pregnant at the same time, I might give you a call just to have a virtual conversation and session about that, because I think that you have a lot to offer in that area. And let's talk a little bit about diet. I don't need to get into the difficulties of the holiday season and those temptations and everything that we're faced with during the holidays. And it's really quite difficult to have family over and sort of branch out all together and say, we're going to have this sort of clean meal. But I suspect that maybe you have done that in your life. But it's not an optimum diet plan for Lyme disease and chronic illness or pain, and specifically the troubles with grains and meats and dairy and caffeine. But let's talk a bit about, because I think this is such a key to unlocking Lyme, would be diet. And can you talk to people, those out there that may have modified their diet a little bit, but have a hard time getting then into that next phase of clean eating, and why?
Well, I think we all struggle with it. I mean, we are programmed to gorge on calories. I mean, that's what it really boils down to. For several 100,000 years, humans ate a forage food diet, which probably wasn't a bad, that was a good diet. It nourished people, and that's what our cells are designed for. So eating within our genes means that it's eating things that were our genes are programmed for, which was forage food. but calories were pretty sparse in a forage food diet. So when a ancient person came across a bush full of berries that was ripe and it would only be there, for several days, or maybe a wildebeest that was downed. They're programmed to gorge on that food when it was available because it wasn't available. So you fast forward to these times of plenty when we have too much food. Because of petroleum, we have just an almost unlimited ability to produce gargantuan amounts of food, but it's all grain based because that's what we can produce in the highest quantity. And it's chiefly wheat and corn and soybeans. And that's what we feed all of our animals. But it's just not what humans are used to. So moving away from that is just a really important thing to do. I try to hit that 50% vegetable mark every day. I mean, that's the big thing. And I try to eat most of my food as fresh food. Am I perfect? No. But it's just getting that mouthfeel of what carbohydrates and fats feel like. If you do a diet that's close to the forage food diet for us now, where you eliminate all the carbohydrates and fats, it just doesn't taste good. It's not satisfying at all. So, bringing in some of those food things with coconut milk or a little agave nectar added to a smoothie, or things that you can do just to help out. We've got Thanksgiving coming up, and a long time ago we moved toward our food being a fresh food Thanksgiving. And it's we still have turkey. I'm not a complete vegan, but it's we do try to get an organic turkey, and that is more of a free range. And we always have lots of vegetables, and we have different kinds of vegetable dishes. But you can have some tastier sweet vegetables like sweet potatoes with butter on them and things like that. We don't do the rolls anymore. We gave up the Thanksgiving rolls. But I make a killer pumpkin pie, and it doesn't have any flour in it. I do this thing for my pumpkin pie crust that I found a recipe out of an old magazine long, long time ago. But you take rice, white rice, and I take pecans and grind up an equal amount of pecans, just mince them up in a food processor. And you mix that with butter or coconut or something like that. Oh, no, take that back. Might have a little butter in it, but you put egg in there, right? And you mix it up with the egg, and you can press that out into a pot. You put the butter inside the pan. I'm trying to sort this out. I haven't made it this year. But you put the butter inside the pan, and so you've got the egg and rice and pumpkin and pecan mix, and you put that out into the pan. And then the pumpkin is just a recipe that doesn't have flour in it. And I use stevia as a sweetener, or a combination of stevia sugar, just to cut down on the sugar. And I make mine about half as sweet as what you would buy in a grocery store anyway. Man, that's a great pumpkin pie. I mean, I look forward to it every year. And it's, it's pumpkin. That's a squash. That's not so bad, and it doesn't have that much carb in it. And the crust is actually much better than a wheat crust. So
gosh,
there's
you're
some
making
things
me
you
hungry.
can do around it.
That sounds amazing. What about
Yeah.
any tricks for stuffing? Do you still do the stuffing?
We do, my wife still does a little bit of stuffing, but we generally we don't stuff it in the turkey anymore. But she does a gluten-free, and we add in some ground up flax seeds to help it, and some other kinds of just to get it, and a lot of time put a lot of vegetables like celery and onions and things like that, and then it ends up being pretty good. So there are ways to get around it. So even our stuffing is half vegetable.
Well, I want to ask you, because I think a lot of people don't quite understand. They think, I think that I'm in California and I'm saying no grains and veggies and all this to kind of be, but truly my symptoms start alleviating the second I eliminate any grains.
Yeah.
And I also combine that a little bit with if I feel some symptoms coming on, I'll do a little modified fast as well for
Yeah.
a few weeks and just kind of get back on track. But why do grains trigger symptoms? I mean, like what medical, what's the background of why that it would actually be?
I think it's mainly the lectin proteins. Um, and it's so when you look at seeds in general, the plant doesn't really want you to eat the seed. The plant wants the seed to go to the ground, and the nutrients nourish the embryo of the new plant. Certain seeds, yes, the plant does want us to eat. You eat a watermelon, wants you to eat the seeds. You eat a blackberry, wants you to eat the seeds, because those seeds are designed to be impervious to digestion. So they come out on the other end well fertilized. That's the motive of the plant. But when you look at grains, those are meant to be blown in the wind. And it's not, they do, and beans, it's meant to be carried by natural forces in nature like wind and water, but not necessarily eaten by another creature. So plants put deterrents in the seeds that would make it unpleasant to be digested by an insect or other animals. So these chemicals called lectins are glycoproteins, and they actually can damage our gut. So high levels of them are not good for us. If you eat kidney beans, if you eat a nice big handful of raw kidney beans that haven't been soaked and haven't been cooked, it can make you deathly ill. So all grains have these high levels of lectins in them. And so that's a big issue. And it's the reason why for hundreds of thousands of years, humans really didn't touch grains or beans very much, because it was a source of food that you had to have technology. For wheat, you've got to grind the wheat, and then you've got to bake it to knock down some of these lectins and make it such that you can actually eat it. And then beans, you had to soak them and boil them. So you had to have vessels, containers of water. And, before and the forage food times, there was enough food to go around and humans really didn't have to do that. There was plenty of food. It was only when, I used to think, well, they didn't, they just got tired of eating a forage food diet, and that's why they changed over. But I've since read some good science, really researching these kinds of things. The conclusion is that humans stopped foraging because they had gotten so good at foraging. The population levels finally got to such that the environment couldn't sustain them anymore. And the first thing that was farmed was wheat in Asia, or the fertile Indus Valley. And so that was the first grain. And about that same time, humans were doing corn in the Americas. But these things were really hard to use at first, so they had to develop technology to actually use them. So you have that direct effect, but not only that, when you have digestive dysfunction, you have overgrowth of bacteria that damages the gut lining, so we develop leaky gut. So these foreign proteins aren't digested properly, they leak into our system, and they just drive our immune system crazy. So not only do you get a local damaging effect in the gut, you get a systemic reaction. And that's where most of my food sensitivities was nuts and beans and grains. I've always found that I could do white rice just fine. That one seems to be well tolerated by most people, but a lot of people have to be careful about various kinds of nuts, beans, grains. Some are worse than others. Lectins and mung beans tend to be pretty well tolerated. The lectins aren't that damaging to us. kidney beans and some other beans, not so good.
So for everybody listening out there who've gone to the doctor and walked away with a piece of paper telling you foods that you can eat and can't eat, and there's mung beans on there, which I've never even, I mean, who eats mung beans? I don't know. But there's a reason behind all of this. There's a reason behind each and every food that they're telling you this one's alkaline, this one's not, this is more damaging. And what happens is, for me, on grains, I get the bloated stomach. I often get a reaction in my throat, it feels like it's actually closing up. I have more throat issues than I do digestive issues for me, myself. And that just, everybody out there, what he's saying is it turns into like a leaky gut situation, which wreaks havoc on your immune system and just overall inflammation, I would guess. Is that correct?
Yeah, it has to do with a leaky gut that, our gut isn't quite as much of a barrier as we once thought. Ideally you'd say, well, you've got this, you've got what's inside the gut, and then you've got this protective barrier that keeps all the bad stuff out. But that's not really the case. I mean, it's somewhat porous because we have to absorb nutrients and that sort of thing. So it's really interesting that microbes do readily cross from the gut. That was a new study in 2008, 2015 that found that, yeah, our microbes, they circulate through our body. They do cross over from the gut. And proteins readily do too. So 70% of the immune system is stationed along the gut because microbes come across, and because normally in everybody, we all have some degree of leaky gut that these proteins come across. So your immune system basically has armed sentries placed all through that system to grab those things when they come across and take care of them. So if you've damaged your gut, and that is a flood instead of a trickle, every time you eat these things, though, then it overwhelms your immune system. And so basically what the immune system does when a foreign protein or a microbe comes across is it produces an antibody to it. We all hear about antibodies. So what is an antibody? Well, antibody serves several purposes. It actually can be damaging to a microbe or disable a microbe, but more than anything, it's a tag. It says, I'm going to tag this thing to be removed because it's foreign. So we have white blood cells that are all through the gut, and something foreign comes across and it says, tag. I'm going to put this tag on there, and then it works its way up the system to the lymph nodes as it's circulating through your body. And another white blood cell says, oh, there's a tag on this. Let's consume this and get rid of it and break it down. Well, say you've got a flood and they're throwing tags everywhere, and this is circulating all through your system, and all your white blood cells are going, oh, what is all this? And all these things are coming at it all at one time. Then you have all these things called immune complexes that just rev your immune system up and make you miserable.
I think that's possibly why modified fast works well for me. To get on top of my symptoms, because then you tend to, when you're in a fast or a modified fast, you tend to ingest things that are like one ingredient, like, one apple or one this or that. It's not like sort of a casserole with a bunch of stuff in it that your body is having to break down, or even just salad with the salad dressing, with all the, with everything that's going on with that, even that in an acute state tends to overwhelm the system. So I think to just really break it down, be very simplified for a long period of time until you get over those initial symptoms. It's a big one. So moral of the story, everybody, is to get out those gluten-free recipes and try a few things this Thanksgiving, even if it's not in your DNA to do anything other than meeting, the typical Thanksgiving dinner. I think it's really worth your health. I want to switch gears a little bit because so my story is that in July, out of the blue, something happened to me this year. And of course it's 2020, so why wouldn't it? But I really had an episode kind of come out of nowhere, and it triggered a mast cell activation situation in my body. And I had really had dealt with that before in the past, but this time was different in that I had some new symptoms that came up. A lot of musculoskeletal, some uh, uh, musculoskeletal, and also just some reactions to little things that I might not normally have a reaction from. So I think I was possibly exposed to mold, or I did get bit, of all things, by a tick this summer. And I, even though the tick came out clean in the lab, I still suffered from this sort of onslaught of sickness that started coming on about 24 to 48 hours after that tick bite. So, and the place where the tick was attached, which had only been attached for 2 minutes, it was a Lone Star tick. It was an aggressive tick, but that became inflamed and pussy. And I mean, I just my body went, stop right now. So what did I do? I called Dr. Rawls, and I got on his restoration kit immediately. And I want to talk a little bit about your restoration kit because it specifically helps heal Lyme patients. And I just was and I'm currently on it, but I want you to tell others out there who seem to react to everything, or might be going through mast cell allergy type reaction to anything. And for me, you can start reacting to heat, food, insect bites, temperature changes, barometer changes, even altitude changes, exercise changes. And it just sort of puts your body in this huge reactive state. So tell us how your restoration kit in particular can help turn that around.
Yeah, it's well, it does for a lot of people. It doesn't absolutely for everyone, or it does very slowly. Everybody with what we call mast cell activation syndrome is a little bit different, as are every single Lyme patient. And some people have to start really slow because even the herbs will set them off. But a lot of people, it's very helpful. And it's all about balance, or what we call homeostasis in the body, and restoring homeostasis. And the herbs really have a wonderful property of helping do that. So, when you talk about triggers, basically it means that your immune system is overexcited. And, part of that can be microbes, because the microbes are trying to shift the attention away from taking out cells that have been infected to microbes, and push the attention toward allergic type reactions. So it just shifts the whole balance of the immune system. And they do that by infecting white blood cells and affecting the messaging systems in the white blood cells. So they can, to a certain extent, have influence over how our immune system works. So if your microbes are overactive, then they can be driving a lot of these symptoms. As far as the tick bite you had, just very quickly, just because a tick bite doesn't have microbes or isn't positive for Lyme disease doesn't mean it's not carrying microbes. They looked at a tick species. This was a study done in China that they found that one tick species carried over 237 different genera, families of ticks. That's enormous. So every tick, and you think about it, we carry thousands, trillions of microbes. Well, ticks carry a lot of microbes, and ticks are really nature's perfect vehicle for transferring microbes from host to host. So there are a lot of things out there that are carried by ticks that we still don't know about. So in my opinion, every tick bite is an invitation for microbes to enter your system. But the other thing that enters your system is tick saliva. And if you're already sensitive to foreign substances coming in your body, then you're going to overreact to that too. And that can throw you into a tailspin. So likely it was a little bit of both. So this thing of mast cell activation syndrome and how the herbs help with that is the herbs have a balancing effect all the way around. And the three most important things that herbs do that I think are significant, and certainly different herbs have slightly different properties. So we use, a variety of herbs, but all herbs are going to have antimicrobial properties, every single one, some more than others. All herbs are going to have protectants for cells. This is really important. You have to think about the fact that plants aren't producing anything for us. They're producing things for themselves, and they're producing things to protect their cells from free radicals and microbes and insects and all of these other things. And herbs just happen to be the things that we've found over thousands of years really mesh well with our biochemistry and do well for us. So they're suppressing microbes. They are protecting cells with a range of antioxidants and other things that are cell protectants, and they're balancing communications. Plants use a lot of the same chemical messengers that we do. So it was what I was talking about in the beginning, that it's really important for all of our cells to be able to communicate. So all the hormones, nerves, and everything in our body, having those balanced is important. So if your system is off, your communications are off, you're hypersensitive to a lot of different things. And the herbs come in, so basically you're taking hormone messengers from a healthy plant, and it has the effect of balancing our central hormone pathways and balancing chemical messengers in the immune system. So it basically just tones things down. So one of the things that I've done with that kit, as far as the herbs in it, is it does have antimicrobial herbs, but it's also balanced with what we call herbs that are more immune modulating. And immune modulating herbs are herbs that basically cool the immune system down, so it's not overreacting to things. So when you put all that together, it's a really nice combination that works for a lot of different people in a lot of different situations.
Yeah, I can tell a difference, and it's so much nicer for me personally to just understand, to not have to. I mean, I was at the crossroads of, do I go back on an antibiotic, or do I just
Yeah.
do what feels right for me? What felt right for me in the moment was to go ahead and invest in the Restore Kit. And by the way, the Restore Kit is probably one of the most cost-effective ways to go for everybody out there, and it's very easy to use, and it's very self-explanatory. And I love the support that you give along with the Restoration Kit. You get a weekly, is it a weekly newsletter type thing that comes in your email box?
Oh,
And
for 6 months.
well,
Yeah.
and it talks a lot about, I mean, there's just so much information in there. It's cool because it talks about, it reminded me, oh, don't only just eat raw veggies and fruits, cook them, because, and it tells you the science behind why does he say to eat cooked veggies, for a while, and then incorporate the raw. And it was just a lot. It's just a wealth of information. So I highly recommend it. And you're right. Maybe it takes, might take a little bit of time to get in your system and get working and all of that. But for me, it's something that I feel doesn't take a huge toll in my body. It's actually adding to my life instead of taking away. I feel oftentimes when I'm on an antibiotic, it's sort of like starting to chop away at my immune system in and of itself. And so it's never
It
quite
does.
made sense. So for me, I feel like the herbal remedies are more healthful in that way, and that it's actually supporting myself and moving it in a forward direction rather than backwards. Also, I'm trying your new CBD drops, and I'm excited about those because I never really, I trust your brand and I trust your product 1,000%. And I do notice a difference in that daily just moment of taking those, and then I feel as though it's just building up in my system over time, and that it will give me some benefits. But what has your feedback been so far with the CBD oil?
Um, yeah, I think CBD does a lot of good things, and cannabis, as far as an herb, whether you're talking about CBD oil exclusively or medical marijuana, certainly can have a place in therapy. But I think that of the two, the CBD oil it has the most important place, because what we're doing is affecting a system in the body called the endocannabinoid system, which is this just regulatory system that is fine tuning everything in the body, fine tuning our endorphins, our mood hormones, everything. So it's not affecting things directly. It's an indirect effect that it's all about that balance that we were talking about. So what we're doing with CBD, how we're influencing that system, is the CBD binds to the endocannabinoid receptors very weakly. And what that has the effect of doing is upregulating the system. Or in other words, the system makes more receptors and makes more of the natural chemicals within the system. So it works better and it fine tunes the body better. So in opposite with THC from marijuana, what you do is you bind to those receptors very weakly. So you have an exaggerated response, and that's why people get euphoric or high from it. But that downregulates the system, so you become habituated to it. So short term, for symptoms of sleep and pain, medical marijuana is a better choice than narcotics or other kinds of drugs, but it still should be used intermittently. But CBD, it can be used on a more regular basis because there's no risk of habituation, zero, and there's no risk of euphoria. So to get that balancing effect continually can really be an asset to recovery that I think is very important.
Sure. And what about children with CBD oil?
The CBD oil with children is just fine. In fact, that was one of the early uses that they found that children with childhood seizures, that it actually was better than any drug. A company called Charlotte's Web got a name for that, and was one of the first good quality CBD products out there. Since then, they've gotten a big reputation. I can't find the qualifications on the website that would tell me that, yeah, they're following what they used to. And, that's something that when we decided we were going to do CBD, we set out to do the best product we could. And just through herbal therapy, I became very interested in CBD and did a lot of research into what qualifies as a good product. But the cannabis plant tends to pull a lot of toxins out of the atmosphere. So even if you grow it organically outside, it can still have a lot of contaminants in it. So we actually chose a product that it's a specific strain that has high levels of CBD, but also really nice blend of complementary terpenes, which have a lot of anti-inflammatory properties. Those are what you find in essential oils. But it's greenhouse grown indoors and under organic conditions. So it's about as pure as you can get. There are other products that are out there like that. There are some good products, but there are a lot of bad ones too. And I always encourage people, do your research. If you go to the company's website and it doesn't tell you all the standards that they're following and all the testing that they're following, you can assume that they're not doing those things.
That's right.
So I
I
think
know
that's really important.
you've gone through painstaking efforts to ensure that with every single one of your products. And are most of them sourced here in the United States, your herbal products and things of that nature?
It's the thing about herbs is to really get the broad spectrum and the selection that you need. You're going to be getting herbs from all around the world. So we get herbs we get extracts from China, we get extracts from India, we get extracts from the Amazon. Um, and we certainly, and some things from North America also. But it's really hard just to do it all from one place. If you said, well, I'm going to just grow all my herbs right here in North Carolina and get everything that we need, it'd be really hard to do.
Sure.
So to really provide the best range of herbal products, you do need to buy things from other places, even China. Um, but it's sourcing. It's we source every single one of our ingredients, and we always buy ingredients that have something called a certificate of analysis, which means that that product has been that particular herb or ingredient has been tested to define that it is what they say it is. It's the correct species of the herb, but it also doesn't have heavy metals or organic contaminants and that sort of thing. Um, but we don't stop there. We take a sample of that and have it tested independently ourselves just to make sure that they didn't pull a fast one on us from that. So we do that with every single batch of ingredient that we use in our supplements. And then the manufacturing process, we have a very close working relationship, an unusual working relationship with our manufacturer, in that we source every single one of all of the ingredients, and all we use them for is the bottling process. And we use a small family-run manufacturing process or facility, so that we really have a lot to say with the quality. We know exactly what's going on in our products. And I'm proud of that. I don't think there are very many supplement companies in the United States that can say that.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I remember early on I did some research into how many certifications that you actually put into your products, and I was very, very impressed. And I took a lot of relief in that, in just knowing that you're a trustworthy guy. I know that you have an extensive background in medicine, and have applied all of this due diligence, to your products. And I'm really grateful to you for that.
Thank you.
I want to know, just in a nutshell, what's the difference between how an herb will attack a bacteria as opposed to how an antibiotic attacks a bacteria, such as
Yeah,
Lyme?
yeah. It's really interesting. Some of our antibiotics, like penicillin, have natural origins, right? And a lot of things in nature. I mean, bacteria produce chemicals to protect themselves. Our normal flora, what they're doing for us is protecting themselves from other bacteria that are potential pathogens. So they're secreting some things continually that suppress the microbes around them. But we know them so well. We're so used to them that those things don't hurt us. So it's like we all have E. coli in our gut, but you could go to another place and get an E. coli that's foreign to you, and it can make you really sick because of that. So most of our antibiotics come from natural sources, but like many drugs, it's not a spectrum of things. It's one chemical, and it's not selective. I talk about it doesn't have any intelligence. You take an antibiotic and it's just killing everything, all the bacteria in your body. So we have a lot of bacteria in our gut and on our skin. The ones inside our body, we all basically are peppered with microbes throughout our body. Even people without Lyme disease, we all do have microbes in our tissues in low concentrations, but those things are inside cells, and all the Lyme microbes and co-infections are intracellular. They live inside cells of the body. So that's pretty much an off-limits place. So not only are the antibiotics not getting there, probably the herbs aren't getting there either, which is why, you hear about people, if they use antibiotic therapy, 1 or 2 months isn't going to get it. Once they have a chronic infection and those things are deeply seated, you have to do it for months and months and months and months on end. So whatever you use, that's what you have to do. And I've come to the conclusion fairly recently, this isn't research-based, this is just really thinking about it over time. I don't think we're really getting to the bacteria inside the cells. Basically, I think what we're doing is preventing the microbes from infecting new cells and keeping our cells stronger. So as all these microbes target weak cells. So if our cells are stronger and they are not weak, and we are preventing them from infecting other cells, then we wear them down over time. So when you do that with an antibiotic, you're killing everything in your body. So you disrupt all those microbes that are producing those chemicals that are suppressing the pathogens in your gut. And those things start erupting, Candida, C. diff, everything else. But not only do they start erupting, they start digging into the cells that line your intestinal tract, and sooner or later start crossing over and crossing into your system and driving your immune system crazy. And this happens every time somebody takes an antibiotic for more than a month or even a couple of weeks. You start disrupting your flora. Herbs are selective. This is really important. Herbs have, for lack of a better word, intelligence. And what I mean by that is when you look at the plant, it's doing this to protect its cells. Well, it doesn't want to kill its normal flora either. So plants are producing not one chemical, but hundreds and hundreds of chemicals to inhibit potentially invasive or pathogenic, especially microbes that are invading cells. That's what they're protecting, all right? So they're producing a range of substances to hit a variety of different microbes in different ways to prevent those things from invading the cells of the plant. So when we take that phytochemistry in our body, we get the same thing. It's selective. It doesn't disrupt the normal flora in the gut. You know, to get well, I ended up, I had reservations about taking herbs in the beginning, how long before this messes up my gut. So I'd go off of them and the stress would come along and I would get sick again. And we would just keep going, doing this over and over. And I finally said, these things don't seem to be bothering my gut. I'm going to just keep taking them. Mm-hmm. And I did for like 8 years and nonstop. And my gut just kept getting better and better and better. And that's when logically I started thinking about the fact that, these are programmed not to disrupt the gut flora and to selectively wear down these microbes and protect cells. This makes a lot more sense. So it's, logically, it's really hard to come up with an argument of how antibiotics could possibly be better than herbs for a chronic infection like chronic Lyme disease. It just, I guess I have to admit that maybe there's a place, but the farther I go through time, the less I'm finding the necessity to use those things or recommend those things.
Sounds like herbs are a great intelligent type of medicine. They have an intelligence about them, and it's not a manufactured thing. It's something that's really has some level of intelligence working there. And I certainly, everybody has to go on their own path, and they have to listen to their own doctors and whatnot. But I think what you bring to the table is really key here. And I love it so much. I feel like this is part of healing that we have yet to completely tap into as a society. And it's right here at our fingertips. So I want to just, tell you, thank you and for all that you have done for the Lyme disease community. You have shown people a different way, and through years and years and years of research and trial and error, I'm sure you've really provided us with an alternative form of healing. And it just is something that I'm very grateful for. And I know that it's helping so many people out there. And so everyone listening, happy holidays. And if you happen to overdo it in December, you might go and just knock down Dr. Rawls' door in January because you might feel a lot of things coming on in January. And we're all in this together. And Dr. Rawls, thank you so much for your time. We are always forever grateful to have you here as part of the Tick Chicks team. And, you can find Dr. Rawls' Restore Kit on my website, thetickchicks.com. You can also go to, can you tell them how to find you, Dr. Rawls?
Rawlsmd.com is the website that I have. And I do consults. They're not really medical consults because I don't manage medications, but I basically help people troubleshoot and look for things that might be holding them back. So I do those. And the book, one of the things that I do for the Lyme community is I give the book away. So it's all you got to do is go to unlockinglyme.com and pay the shipping and handling, and it'll be on your way. So
it's such a good book. Everybody should put that on their Christmas list for sure, or their Hanukkah list. And also, where I know that the CBD oils are through a different one of your companies, correct? What is that website?
That's Vital Plant Select. Right now, just because of the legal issues in America, you can't sell CBD products on the same site that you sell other supplements. So we had to have a separate site. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. But yeah, the CBD, I mean, we started off by talking about all the sleep issues and everything else and inflammation, and CBD can help with that. The herbs can help with that. And taking things a little bit more slowly and trying not to overdo it. And, making sure you allow plenty of time to sleep at night, watch the television and computer screens, and just getting revved up by all the issues out there during the evening hours. And so, cultivate that good sleep, allow time for it. It's really important.
Well, thank you. And I also want to mention something that you do and you offer to the community, which is so fabulous, are your webinars.
Oh,
and if you've never tried one, I always try to make a point of making every webinar that you have, because it's just Dr. Rawls, and he takes questions, and tell us a tiny bit about those webinars, please, if you will.
Most of them are informational. We'll just pick a topic. We do one webinar every single month, and it's just different. It could be neurological symptoms, it could be cardiac symptoms, various aspects of Lyme disease, or other things of chronic illness or immune function, or and so the herbs are always part of it because that's so important. But we've got one coming up next week. It will be Wednesday night here, 8:00 Central or Eastern time. So I guess you guys are 3 hours behind out there, so you can still catch it. But it's we're trying something ambitious. This is new. And my managing editor came up with this idea of trying to do a somewhat interactive looking workshop of taking down your obstacles, and we're going to try to make it interactive and take questions during the presentation instead of the end. And we don't know where it's going. It could be really interesting. So
good luck with that. That would be fun. That would be fun to be a part of. And if somebody has to miss that, can they then access that afterwards?
Oh yeah, sure. There's always the replay. It's always available, and we usually keep a backlog of them if people are interested in particular topics like detox or whatever.
Yeah, they're they're great. I mean, if you did nothing else but just follow Dr. Rawls' protocol, his book, and actually activate those webinars every month, you could probably do this on your own from anywhere in the world. And that's
there's no probably to it. Yeah,
that's how
absolutely.
Thorough his company and all the people that work for him, that's just how thorough the program is. It's solid and it's trusted. And anyway, We thank you so much for your time, Dr. Rawls. We hope I hope you come back soon, and I wish you the happiest of holidays.
Well, same to you, Allie, and thank you again for the invitation. And always, all it takes is an invitation. I'd love to join you.
Thank you.
It's been great. Thank you very much.
Stay safe.